Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. The Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
Liz and I, so Donnie is not here to babysit or regulate.
Unfiltered.
Unfiltered, that's right. Unfiltered ARC podcast. We've got another fun topic today. We are going to talk about bad bosses. And, it may not include just other people as the bad bosses. We'll see where this conversation goes. But
Foreshadowing.
I think that's right. Between Liz and I, we definitely have our share of bad boss stories. And, Liz is the best storyteller on the podcast. So I'll kick it to you to share the first story.
Sure, I'll kick it off. So I think, today we wanted to talk about this topic because I think it's really important to understand when you're a problem, when your boss is a problem, what real acceptable boundaries are, what is not acceptable, how to even understand that or, understand yourself enough to work through these issues. And one of the things I have felt on my life journey, and particularly in my career journey, is understanding self-awareness in the workplace is different than self-awareness in personal relationships. And it's also different in understanding when you have power and when you don't, right? Because in your personal life, generally, you're on the same footing as everyone else, and they don't have a lot of power over you unless, it's like you're a kid and you have parents, right? And you're used to having that type of familial type oversight. But it's different in the workplace, and we're not in the military, right? We're accountants. Nope. We work for other accountants who are humans. And generally in those situations, at least for me, I walked in expecting equality and expecting to be on the same footing as people and being treated with the same respect as you would in a personal relationship, except in a professional setting, which, has its own nuances and implications. But I preface with that because I think to understand my perception and my story of the bad boss, you have to understand that my expectation was that I was walking into a professional environment where I would be on equal footing. And so I think there are times in my career where I totally had a bad boss, and there are times in my career where, in retrospect, I don't think my boss was the problem. It was more I was the problem in how I was approaching the problem.
Sure.
I said problem way too many times, but anyways.
There was a problem.
There were definitely problems. And as I've grown and become more self-aware and learned how to interact in professional settings in a more professional way, I'm repeating words again. It's lots of P's. We could go with professional problems and professional problem places. I don't even know what I was talking about. Oh, right. Storytelling. Okay. So I would say my first bad boss situation happened when I was really young in my career. And I went into a professional setting. And because of my, I would say, intellect and ambition and ability to just kind of get stuff done, I was promoted very quickly. Yep. And I was not emotionally intelligent as a human when I was younger in the way that you needed to be in a professional setting. Yep. So And I think that that's true for most young people, that
Yep.
everyone has like a certain level of emotional intelligence, but as you grow in a professional setting, you start to understand the dynamics and the politics and more P words, all the different things at play that you otherwise like don't pick up on. So I was working for a large firm, and as is common with large firms, there is a culture of do all the things at the lowest level possible, and then someone above you will take credit for that work.
Right.
And that I still think is a horrible culture. So boundary setting, if that is happening to you, it is a problem. It's an actual problem. It's not a
Right.
self-awareness problem.
This
It's
is a
not another.
flag. Yep.
This is a red flag. And it needs to be addressed. So the actual bad boss story. I started doing this work. I was given a project. I was delegated a project, and this project should never have been delegated to somebody in their first 3 years of accounting ever. This was a project that should have been on somebody with 7 to 10 years, probably more.
Wow.
And they delegated it to me because my boss didn't have the time, didn't care to research it, and didn't like feel like this was worthy of their attention. In the delegation meeting, again, I expect equality. I voiced my concerns and I said, hey, I don't think this project should be given to me. I am very low level. I have never done this work before. And this type of project that affects a lot of different people likely needs somebody who has done it before. It's going to take me longer. I'm going to have to research a ton more. I'm going to need your help. And also, like, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, right? So I voiced my concerns. My boss says, oh, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. I don't think it's that hard. You'll be fine. Like, just go do it, do your best, and we'll figure it out. Okay. So me being anxious as I am, I'm like, all right, well, what do I do? I should set meetings, right? So I put together a project plan. I set meetings with my boss every week to go over the project and ask my questions. And guess what happens? She canceled all the meetings.
Oh, no.
So I'm working on this
Wow.
project blind. I'm emailing questions because my meetings keep getting canceled. I get called into her office and said, hey, you need to stop emailing me one-off questions because I can't handle getting questions all day. And meanwhile, this was before we used instant messenger in offices. So just to like put that out there. Otherwise, I would have been messaging her all day. Like, what the heck is this? I don't understand this term. What does this mean? Where should I get this information? Right.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, I get yelled at for asking questions because they were individual questions, right? Okay, so I could have done summary emails, whatever. I, respond with, okay, well, maybe you should show up to our meetings, which
oops.
if you are a human interacting with peers, might be a fair statement, right? That might be a nice fair, like, hey, maybe you should show up when you said you would, and we wouldn't have
in
this
a space
problem,
where
right?
there's trust. That's probably a reasonable response.
That did not get a good response from this human. In fact, that got oh, you are insubordinate. To which I was like, well, yes. And also, you're not showing up in the way that I need to do my job for you, that you are paying me to do. So there's a problem, right? So I didn't address that great. I'll admit that. Person still didn't show up to meetings. I start writing summary emails with questions. They go unanswered. I start summarizing my summary emails into bigger emails. And so by the end of the week, I'd have my Friday email with all of my unanswered questions are attached. Please answer these questions before I can proceed. Nothing's happening. I finally get a couple of responses. I start reaching out to other people in the company, asking questions.
Wow.
I'm like, I have deadlines. I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out. My bosses clearly doesn't care. Also, she wasn't showing up to the office very often. And, in CPA world, like you have audits, you go out, you do stuff, you go to client sites. Like they're not always, or people always in the office. So like that, not untypical. I would say was not great when you delegated a high priority project, but whatever. So I start freaking out because I know I'm going to miss the deadline. And so I tell her point blank in an email, I'm going to miss this deadline. Okay. I'm going to miss this deadline. Here is why. I have a lot of questions. None of them have been answered. And if I got all of the answers today, I still would not make the deadline because there is too much work to be done. and
Yep.
I can't progress. To which I got called into HR and put on a performance improvement plan.
Wow.
And I was
Wow.
like, what the heck? Like, and I provided all the documentation to HR, and they said, you were rude in the way that you spoke to your boss. And meanwhile, the boss still hasn't actually talked to me about this.
No acknowledgement,
No,
no addressing, just radio
nothing.
silence.
Absolutely nothing.
Wow.
So, that is an example of a really shitty boss.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And like, yeah,
Th-
absolutely. I needed coaching. I needed development. I should have approached it better. I was probably annoying. I'm sure my anxiety was coming through my emails. And also, in that situation, delegated a high priority project with little information up front, no
Right.
support, no resources for support, didn't show up to meetings, didn't respond to questions, and then put me on a performance improvement plan for missing a deadline that there was no possible way I could make.
I mean, was there a scenario where she was setting you up to fail intentionally, or is
I don't think
this
so.
no,
I think
just
just completely oblivious. And also like if you had delegated this project to a 7-year person, like a manager level person,
right,
or like somebody approaching senior manager, maybe,
right,
no, it would not have been a problem. They would have
right,
had the not like if you gave me this project today, I could do it in like a week. And I had a
sure,
month to do it. But at the time, I was brand new. I was not
right,
even a senior associate and
right.
was like, I don't know how to do any of these things. I have no experience, no knowledge. Like I
Yep.
am researching it all. And at that point, guys, we didn't have like any AI research tools. Like you had to do it all manually.
That's right.
Um, like we were still doing
Wow.
like code-based, research with our keyword search. Oh God, it
Oh,
was
that was
bad.
so bad. So
Yeah.
bad. Wow. Wow.
That's my worst boss story.
It's interesting because it's not too different from my first bad boss story. And this was the first firm that I started my career with, and I had a manager who, this was an individual who trust nobody was basically the policy, even their child.
Yeah,
Like it was their child
that's
had to
hard.
call the moment they got home. And if they didn't, this person would even like pause a client meeting to say, I have to call my child to see why they haven't called me yet. This level of just no trust across the board. And
Yeah,
so every project was constant, like, did you do this? Did you do this? The micromanaging because of lack of trust. And no matter how much you performed, you could not earn any space to breathe. And I had a project, it was an audit for a nonprofit that we were working on. And, I wasn't having the challenges you were having in the sense that I couldn't get responsiveness. There was plenty of responsiveness, but what happened was, and this ended up being a theme, is they would make promises to the client but then not communicate to the team who
mm,
was working on the projects that
right.
there were these expectations set. And
And
to
that
the
happens
point,
all the time.
all the time, all the
Hmm.
time. And I being a young professional, trying to do what I can do, I was home Christmas Eve preparing for my family to come over to celebrate Christmas. And I got a call from her saying, I need to get my ass into the office and get the draft financials to the client because a deadline had been promised that it would be there before Christmas. And, that I obviously, if I'd known the deadline, would have made sure that this was done so it didn't interrupt my plans with my family. And again, this was at a time when there was no ability to work remotely. I had to
Hmm.
get in my car and go to the office because all of that information was in the office. And, it was one of these things. And ultimately what happened after a couple years, this happened with a really large client, and there ended up being a breakup
Mm,
in the firm because it costs the firm owner so much money because of her, inability to manage
yeah.
expectations, manage the team, and in reflecting on it, it was like her lack of trust in everybody was just the heart of everything because she didn't even trust, like we couldn't trust her because of
Hmm.
her lack of trust in us. And it just,
Right.
everybody was set up for failure.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
reflecting on like what you were talking about, like I was young. I didn't really know how to even address that with the firm owner because, I mean, as far as I knew, he trusted her because she
Right.
was really running the teams
Hmm.
and running the projects. It was a really awful situation. And it just, one of the things that I learned from it was I learned to lead with trust and
Hmm.
to trust people until you can't, rather than not
The
trusting
other.
people
Yeah.
to eventually maybe possibly earn it after God knows how long.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And the thing is, like, what I learned through having and not all of the situations I was in were because of bad bosses, right? Like that
Sure.
one I shared, yes, bad boss. In this case, for you, bad boss, right? Like just not good at being a manager,
Right.
right? Um, but there are other situations in my career where I have felt like the person is actually good at their job, right? They're a good manager, they're good at certain things, and I have had bad experiences or interactions, right? Which makes sense because humans aren't always completely 100%
Fair.
consistent in all aspects of their life. And people have
Yep.
like personal stuff going on too, right?
People
Like
have bad days. Yep.
I've worked with plenty of people where, the first year of their child's life, they are stressed and not sleeping, and everything is harder, even though they're an amazing
Yep.
manager and an amazing boss, right? And there's personal stuff outside of just having babies, like that, of course, is going to affect everyone, but that
Sure.
comes up and requires time and attention, and you just don't know what's going on with people
That's
to
right.
be able to categorize them holistically. But I can say, like, a good key takeaway from both of our stories is like the thing that categorized that to each of us about it not just being a situational issue, but rather being a personnel issue was
Right.
that this was a pattern of behavior, right? This
Yep.
wasn't a one-off situation,
A
something
moment.
forgotten, a miscommunication. Maybe
Yep.
you just don't have personalities that jive together, right? Like that happens sometimes too. And that doesn't
Absolutely.
necessarily mean it's a bad boss. It just means it's a bad situation and a bad pairing for that
Yep.
employment. But for in both of these cases, like the person I was working for could like delegated everything, trusted you would just get it done, and provided no support consistently over and over again, and then blamed you when it wasn't done. And if you did it well, they took credit for it.
Yep.
I had other instances with that same person delegating me projects, and if I blew it out of the park, she did 100% of it, and I didn't touch it.
Of
Whereas if
course.
it didn't get done, all my fault, and I'm getting reported to HR without even a conversation. And
Yep.
in your case, you had a boss that was just so, I would guess, anxious and detail oriented that they couldn't let go and trust that things would get
Yep.
done. So they had to control everything and then didn't communicate well. Um,
That's right.
and you don't know when you're that young that you have to ask those questions, right? Like you don't know that you have to go into your boss's office when you're being delegated something and be like, okay, when did you promise this to the client?
Right. That
Like,
and that's advice I give a lot of like young professionals starting out. Like when you are being delegated a project, it is okay to ask those questions. Like, when
yeah,
is this a due date? And if they say, well, there's no due date, just get it to me when you can. No, give me a due date so that there are clear expectations. Like that's okay to ask those things when you are being given
right.
projects.
Absolutely. And I have like a list of questions that I call like my delegation list. And when I am delegating to somebody, I go through that list myself and make sure I didn't miss anything,
Love
and it's
that.
things like what is the deadline that I need you to complete it? What is the deadline to the client, right? And why do we
Yep.
have a buffer? Like what is that time being used for? Generally it's for review, right?
Yep.
Um, like how much time should this take? Who should I talk to if you're unavailable and I have questions? Like, when is it okay to contact the end client? When should I contact internal teams? Right.
That's
And
right.
so, I have all of these questions right now and I use it as a rubric and I send it out to my team and I say, like, hold me accountable to this and hold everyone else on the team accountable to it as well. But that's
Yep.
not training that is done. Like, you show up in the workforce and people expect you to know how to receive delegation and manage up, and they don't teach you how to do that. So you like,
No.
I don't know, like you're supposed to just know. I didn't.
Yeah, well, and that's the other challenge that I think, especially, I don't think it's unique to the accounting profession, but you see it a lot, is generally good technicians get promoted into manager and supervisor roles because they are
Hmm.
good technicians, not
Hmm.
because they are good managers or supervisors. And
Right.
now they're all of a sudden responsible for managing and supervising a team of humans, which was not the thing that they were good at, that they were promoted for doing
Right.
and not trained to
Exactly.
do it.
And then you have the flip side where you have people who would likely be really good managers and project managers and supervisors that don't get promoted because they're like, billable hours are too low or they're yapping to the people in the coffee break room
100%.
instead of like doing the technical work, which is so difficult to get through if your personality doesn't match that, right?
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, it's weird.
yeah, it makes no sense. But this is the profession we live in. And while I would love to change all of it on day one, it doesn't really work that way. So yeah, so I think like
Yeah,
going into these situations, if you are feeling like you have a bad boss, like a good way to evaluate it and think about it is like, or at least the way I think about it, and I think about this for my team too, is like, is this a situational issue? Is there something else going on that's temporary or something I might not know about? Is this consistent?
right.
Have I gotten this feedback from a bunch of people? Like if you're sitting in the office, and particularly with the boss you had, and you're talking to your coworkers, they're all going to have the same experience, right? And then
Yep.
it's like, oh no, it's this person doesn't know how to manage, right?
Right.
Versus, oh, this is like a situational issue, and maybe like I need to come back to the table. So I can tell you another issue when I was the problem. Um, so when I worked in Nevada, I had to have audit hours to get my license.
Right.
I was working on the tax team. So I had a very particular boss on the tax team that liked to see things a certain way and would give you review points like, this needs to be capitalized in this way, or you need to order these expenses from largest to smallest, which at that point the tax software didn't do for you. You had to actually do it manually and put them in.
That's right.
And it was like nitpicky things that I didn't care about. Now, with some reflection and understanding, I understand why she did care about it. It showed
Sure.
professionalism. It showed the client that like what was important, the biggest numbers first, they could see it. There were reasons that these things mattered from a higher level that I didn't understand or care about, right? And it
Yep.
shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, if that's what my boss wanted to see and she was being fair and consistent in that
Right.
application, then that's fine, right? Even if I don't emotionally relate to it.
Yep.
And so I was delegated a bunch of trust returns, which were my least favorite to do. And
Yep.
by this particular boss who I knew would be nitpicky. And I also know I am not the most attentive to those types of details. And so I had a list going of like all the review points I had gotten from her previously that I thought were bullshit. And I called it my bullshit review point list. And I would go through those before I turned in a project. And at the same time, I was working on my audit hours, right? So I'm working on my audit during the day with the audit teams at clients. I'm doing tax at night. And I was working 95-hour weeks, maybe more. I was exhausted. The bullshit review point list became a problem, right? It became something
Yep.
I really
Yep.
cared about. And I was like, oh, this boss is awful. Like, it's so hard to work for her. It sucks. Like, it's shitty. And it wasn't like she was not shitty. She was a good boss. She was a good manager. She delegated things appropriately. She was consistent.
Yep.
Um, I just didn't understand her at all. And we had very, very different personalities. Like she was
Sure.
high fashion, cared a lot about like material things and like was always in the biggest, best places. And I was like, please just let me wear my Birkenstocks to the office because I don't like heels. You know, like I don't know how to use a purse appropriately. Like, I'm sorry, I don't. And I also don't know the brands in which purses come from or what they mean. And I don't care about it. So we had nothing to emotionally connect on either.
Yep.
Or personally, we had no connection. We were bad fit, right? Um, I started turning in returns and I was like, you know what? It is materially accurate. The numbers on the return are right. The things on the return are right.
Yep.
I know that the tax due is correct. I know, all of the, documents going out are correct. The letters are right. Everything is tied up. My work paper package, perfect. And she every time would give me the bullshit review points. And I would get so mad and I'd be bitching to my coworkers. And I'm like, I can't work for this woman. Like, she's driving me insane. And I'm like, if she cares so much, she should just change it herself, right? Ultimately, I got taken off of any trust returns completely, as that was like her specialty in that office.
Yep.
And just never had to prepare those again. I did have to prepare a few corporate returns for her in the future, and I learned through the years that what she cared about did actually matter, and I was just being an obnoxious child. But I learned a lot from that instance, and what I learned was like that situation sucked. Like, it was awful to feel constantly belittled and constantly like,
Yep.
I did a really good job on these returns, and I was still told they weren't good enough every time. Even
Yeah.
when I went through my list of review points, there was some nitpicky thing. Like, I put cents somewhere and no cents somewhere else. Or like, there were things that, like, again, I don't care about. And still
Right.
to this day, if I'm reviewing a tax return, I don't care about that stuff. My clients don't care about that stuff, right? She did, and her clients
Yep.
did. And so, like, that's okay. That did not make her a bad boss. I
Right.
was the bad employee in that situation because I was being paid to do a job to a certain standard, and her standard was just something I didn't relate to.
Yep.
And so I think the red flag there, like in retrospect, was that I spent so much time bitching about it and not like just sitting down with her and being like, hey, why is this your standard? Can you
Right.
give me something to care about here? Because I can't figure it out. And it seems to not matter how many times I go through it and review it, I'm going to get the same review points. So like, I might as well just let you do the review.
Yep. 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 Man, that story so resonates. And again, it's actually really funny because my story of the situation where it felt like at the time it was a bad boss situation, but it was I think a bad Byron situation. There's probably a lot of them to pick from, but this
We
one
should
in
do a whole nother
particular.
episode on bad Byron. That'd be fun.
I think in accounting that we too often forget that we have to put our own mask on first, like in an airplane, right? Put our own mask on first before we help others. And our whole thing is, oh, there's clients, I got to help the clients, I got to do all this stuff. And we're giving so much of ourselves that we're not taking that time to take care of ourselves. It's part of the reason why at the center we created this whole personal resilience program, which is really, for you to be that strong rock and foundation for the clients, you need to be solid yourself first. So it really is a matter of taking care of ourselves, and then we can take care of others. In fact, we can take care of more others the stronger that we are as a foundation. And that's also why a lot of what we do is based in teams, because then even if you're faltering, some of the teammates can jump in to cover or to allow you the time to rest so that you can rest, but we're still holding everybody up. So that's why I think working together in a team is so important, as well as taking care of yourself.
That would be fun. But it was an audit, and I had a audit manager who was Very detail oriented. The review notes would be like, using the wrong color pencil for, for my notes and my tick marks, and a certain like formatting things where just like you, I'd be like, but it's correct. Like it shows, the loan deferral, everything is there. It's just not in the format you want, and we had, this was at a different firm from my last story, a larger firm where you worked for multiple different partners throughout the year. And so when it was review time, you would have kind of a handful of reviews from different partners that you worked with, and that would go into a pot, and they would evaluate if you were ready for promotion based on, the overall there. And, you know, my my perspective was like, this is the only boss that's a pain in my ass. And I can be killer with all these other managers, continue to do what I'm going to do and not play her fucking game. And her review won't matter because I'll have glowing reviews from everybody else. And, what I found out was that one review held me back because it became this example of where I was not probably being professional and playing the game, because not only was this partner detail oriented but also very influential with the partner group, to no surprise. And so that one review really, created a shadow on these other glowing reviews, because they're like, well, yeah, of course you got a great review from so and so. They're like the easiest person to work for. Like they, all their reviews
They
are
don't
great.
pay attention. They're like, oh, I like you. You're great. I'm not
Right. Like
reviewing your
they're
stuff.
fun to hang out with. Like, right. And, it held me back because,
Hmm.
when it became time for promotions and salary adjustments, and at the time I was pissed because they were the reason I was being held back. And,
Hmm.
I from my perspective, my work papers were fine. The audit was good, but I was not following instruction. They were clear to me. The notes, their review notes were very clear. They were color coded. I mean, it was super easy to follow. But I definitely, I just had this thing where wasn't going to play the game, and it bit me,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
as
yeah,
it does.
that's it.
But it feels in the moment like it's a bad boss situation. And so, I think some of the retrospective analysis I think I have done on my career, and I'm sure you have done on yours, has shown me like, oh, yeah, okay. So I was immature. I was handling this wrong. I was only seeing my own perspective. I wasn't thinking about where other people were coming from or
Right.
why or how and I think, in this case, like that particular partner probably had reasons. Like they wanted to see it in the same format so that they could review things faster, right? Because their time is probably more important than yours at that level.
Sure.
And that's
That's
hard
fair.
to understand and appreciate, but also like that's what happens, you know? And the color coding, like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, if you are used to seeing it a certain way and it's totally different, it's
Right.
off-putting and then it takes more time. Again, like we are a time-based industry, which much to my chagrin, but at the moment we still are. So,
Absolutely. Well, and the other thing that I think I learned too is like, a lot of times these scenarios will perpetuate because you talk to your colleagues, you talk to,
hmm.
the person in the office next to you who
Yep.
also has the same complaints.
Hmm.
And, so you kind of get this mob mentality where I'm like, well, everybody can't stand it. So I'm just going to like buck the system. Meanwhile, they're
Hmm.
still all like meeting the minimum
Hmm.
requirements. But you feel empowered because others agree with you that like, this
Hmm.
is BS. You have to be really careful
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. Well, and I think like, you know, pairing is important as well, and caring about the reasons why
Oh,
or what's going on or And it's sometimes really hard when you're stuck in that like myopic frustration point of like, I am just annoyed about this one thing and I can't break through it to actually
Yes.
have some empathy or like take a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things I wish I had done when I was younger was like ask for one-on-ones with people when I felt there was any kind of
Right.
tension there, or if I felt like they were being unfair to me for any reason,
Yep.
or if I felt like they were being a bad manager for any reason, right? Like ask for one-on-ones and just ask questions and explain like what your needs are.
Yeah.
And I know that that is very, very difficult, especially when there's a power dynamic. And
Yep.
also, the worst that happens is they say no. And then you
That's right.
can put them into the classification of bad boss, because a good
That's
boss
right.
would say yes to a one-on-one if a team member is asking for it.
Such great advice. And, there's so many moments I remember when I was young where I thought about doing that. And then I was like, I don't even want to like face that conversation. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to tell me that I'm
It's
being bad.
difficult.
I like,
Mm-hmm.
right. And it's the now perspective makes me realize like, gosh, how that would have looked from the boss's perspective if I came to them and said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not delivering based on what you need. Can we talk about it?
Right.
Like, oh man, how that
Yeah.
changes. And even if they like read you the riot act at that point, like
Mm-hmm.
at least they've told you.
Right.
They've said it all. You're going to hear it eventually.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
man,
And the worst time to hear it is in a review, like a roundtable review, when you're like,
that's
oh,
right.
you are not getting this promotion because of this, right? And it's like,
Right.
what?
Yeah,
Cool. So this is now affecting my trajectory of my career and my pay and like all these other things because of what I perceived as a bad boss moment, right? But
that's right.
at the same time, it might not have been that.
That's absolutely, absolutely right. So, because you talked about the care factor and not caring, I'm going to jump in with my story of when I was a bad boss.
I'm excited for
Um,
this. Can I go
uh,
get some popcorn?
yeah, man, this one hurts too. So this is when I owned my IT company, and there was a client-related project that just wasn't getting done. It was, I had delegated it, and it wasn't getting done, and as a boss, it is really difficult. It's almost like as a parent, right? To watch your child fail, right? And the one thing that's a little bit different in like a boss situation, especially where it's a business you own, is you also understand the implications of your team failing to deliver to a client has revenue potential revenue impact to your organization and your ability to pay salaries and all of these things. So there's all this stress and things weren't getting done, and we sat down to have this meeting to be like, okay, like I'm here, we're going to power through this. And I discovered that there was this, gosh, I wish I could remember all of the details around it, but there was like this one aspect of the project that they were stuck on. And it was something that in the moment of like having a client complaining to me that this is not getting done and my frustration that I felt like I could have done it in an instant, I was like, this is the most meaningless bullshit ever. And I just kind of like erupted in this meeting and I was like, I don't fucking care. This like is not the issue. We need to like get the other stuff done. And I stormed out and you know, somebody came to talk to me and they were like, you can't say you don't care. And I was like, I don't care. I like that is not like I need this project done and that little thing I don't fucking care. And they were like, no, you can't like everybody is working hard on this thing. And if you say you don't care, like you can say you don't feel like that is an important decision or something, but the moment you tell your team you don't care, how do you expect them to continue to care about what they are doing if you don't care? And it was such I mean, it wasn't like that it just settled in the moment. I think it was like 3 days later before that I was driving to work and like that conversation came back and all of a sudden this like I don't care became something that I try to never ever say ever again because of it. But at the time, it just there was so much emotion going on, and I didn't care. I like it. It was I just wanted it to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and it oh man, it hurt. That one like has haunted me, and to this day, I mean, it's been probably God, 15 years since that happened. And it's like that is one of those things, that's scar tissue that I
Yeah.
carry with me to this day.
But I think, you learned from it, and that's what matters.
Fair, fair. Absolutely. Yeah, if I didn't learn from it, I probably wouldn't have cited it as an example of when I was a bad boss. There's probably those other stories out there.
That's true. That's really fair. But I think that that's the power of humanity, right? Is to actually
Sure,
learn from our mistakes and get better at things.
no
Um,
doubt.
so I am extremely ADHD, and I do a lot on a daily basis to compensate and still be productive. And one of the things that my brain does is it finishes people's sentences. It finishes people's thoughts. It connects things before people tell me the things that should be connected. And that annoys the heck out of most people.
True story.
From a lot of people's perspective, they're like, are you psychic? Like, how and what? Like, what is this? And it is my brain's ability to pattern recognize and match things and
Very
preempt it in a
quickly.
way. But it also comes with a downside when you are managing people. And the downside is you see the problems before they do, um, and you don't let them learn from it. And so I can
Yep.
tell you my like biggest weakness as a boss is proactively predicting when the patterns are not going the direction they should on things and intervening before I let my team figure it out or handle it for themselves. Um, and it might not feel like a bad boss situation in the moment, but it creates situations where my team doesn't have confidence, where
Right.
they're not learning the things that they need to learn because I am constantly in the background fixing things or finding the issues or asking the question when it needs to be, like before
Yep.
it needs to be asked. And I never give them the room to do the things themselves. And so kind of similar to your micromanager, but while I don't, nitpick or micromanage in an active
Right.
way, I can be a bit of a problem when I'm delegating projects in that this is how my
Sure.
brain works. And I, for the love of me, have had the hardest time figuring out how to not, like, how to just not. Like,
I
I don't know. Like, it drives me nuts. It's like when somebody's saying something wrong, like, I want to tell them how to say it correctly. Like, my brain is pedantic and it's
mm,
pedantic in like an anxiety inducing way where if it doesn't come out of my mouth, I'm sitting here like,
yep.
right? And it's so difficult. And
Yep.
also, I can't do that and be a good boss because I'll never develop leaders in the
Right.
way that I need or want.
It is such a difficult situation, and I can sympathize a lot with that, especially when like there's things that we are good at that we know we're good at, like and you can see that, and there were a couple similar moments when I can remember two specific moments where somebody came back and they were like, XYZ happened and it didn't go as planned. And I'm like, I knew it. Like I knew, like I
Mm-hmm.
saw you walking into those flames. Like I knew.
Yes.
And the double-edged sword is they then go, well, I was set up for failure. Like you knew, like and it's no, you weren't set up for failure, but like I can't be there to predict every bad thing that's going to go wrong every single time.
Right.
And as humans, like, for whatever reason, we just can't accept being told that something is a bad decision. We have to experience it. Like
Correct.
it's like we just have to. You can tell me all day
Mm-hmm.
long, don't touch that. It's hot. But until I burn my hand, like I'm gonna think that you are telling me a lie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And it's like,
ah,
there are ways to give people the space they need to learn and develop and let them come to you when they're perceiving, and maybe they don't have the solution, right? Like in your instance, like you saw that person walking into fire and withheld it because they needed to learn that, right? Um, Now they're going to have that intuition. So if they see similar circumstances progressing on another project, now they come to you and they say, hey, I am worried that I'm going to end up with the same result I had before because of these things that are similar. Can you help me proactively solve this?
sure.
Versus you coming to them and being like, there's a wall of fire up there. Don't do that. And then they're going to be like, well, what the heck? And then next time they're not going to know because they're not going to have those reflexes or that knowledge. And so they're going to keep walking into the fire and you're going to have to keep putting up a wall and being like, no, because they're not going to learn the lesson. And so, I think that is where I have struggled a lot and where I have been working professionally to be a better boss is by
Yeah,
giving people the support and proactive ability to learn and develop without limiting their development by constantly firefighting for them.
right.
And trusting that they'll learn the lesson and they'll do it better. And I can say I've gotten through this, at least I think I have, I work on it on a regular basis. Um, and I've gotten much better at asking pointed questions instead of telling people.
Yeah,
Instead of saying, oh, hey, there's fire up there, saying, what's the next step you're taking? How are you thinking about this? What are your concerns? And start digging. And, there's like very specific ways to do this where people come to the conclusion themselves where they say, oh, wait, I didn't think about this other issue that might become a problem. And you don't have to be like, look, there's the issue. You can be like, hey, Byron, let's talk about all these other things. And then
that's
you
right.
yourself can say, oh, I think I may have thought of an issue. And you never have to say, well, I did that on
Yeah,
purpose because I knew the issue was there, ever. You
yeah,
never have to say that. A bad
yeah.
boss would say that. A good boss would be like, high
That's
five,
right.
I'm proud of you for thinking of this. Like,
Right.
I'm
That,
proud of you for doing this work.
you nailed it. I think that is the approach of, asking the questions and helping I think we even talked about it on another episode about this idea of like a pre-mortem, like actual having a brainstorming session of a pre-mortem of like, let's talk about what went wrong before everything goes wrong and teaching people to think through those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a function of asking questions. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, sometimes we're friggin' busy and I don't have time to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know,
Yeah. But making the space and the time to be a supportive leader
yep,
and manager versus a reactive one,
right.
and a superior. What's the right word for that? Where you're like in charge.
Mm.
Anyways,
Oh,
when you're like a sergeant to your team.
there's a word. There's a
Yeah,
word. I know
but
that
you don't
word.
have to be militant in it
That's right.
either way.
Yep.
But I think a lot about when I was a kid, this is I'm nerd moment. When I was a kid, I read a lot. And one of the things I found fascinating was like American writers and historical American writers specifically. And so I read a lot of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I don't
Mm,
know if you've read a lot of him, but he has a lot of like really important quotes. And one of them that stuck with me when I was a child was trust men and they will be true to you. Treat them greatly and they will show themselves great. And I have in my life endeavored to put trust and generous assumptions and assume
yeah.
people will be great in response. And it served me quite well. And I think that that is a good
Yep.
message to people like your micromanager boss that was kind
Right.
of a bad boss, right? Like, If you never give people the ability and you never give them the opportunity, they won't do it. So you have to give them that by assumption and by inherent nature of your relationship with people.
Yeah, and to maybe even bookend our episode here, you started talking at the beginning about this idea of like, the power dynamic and power, and based on that quote from Emerson is awesome. I love that quote. I'm gonna write that down. But there was another advice I heard, and I don't remember who shared it, but it was this idea of being a good manager is about giving away power, and like giving power, giving the ability to do things, and giving away power. And I've thought about that a lot in the last couple of years in roles where I am leading teams of empowering those people to either succeed or fail. And you kind of need both. You need people to have the opportunities to succeed and the opportunities to fail, to either help them succeed another time or maybe find something else where they can be successful at. But that idea of giving power, which requires trust and requires this belief of positive intent, and giving people those opportunities.
So a good boss will give you those opportunities. They will delegate that power and trust, and also offer the support so that you can be successful without having to learn everything on your own. A bad boss might delegate those things and not give you any support or any
never respond to an email or Slack.
Just ignore you. Or on the flip side, not delegate the power at all. That's right. So I think that's a good way to think about good and bad bosses, or specific ways to get through it. So thank you for that conversation, Byron. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you. It was fun. Absolutely. Well, we'll see y'all again soon, and Donnie will be back to help us with the conversations in the future.
Say the smart things.
That's right.
All right, bye guys.
Thank y'all.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.